Hello, friends. It's Latasha here. So, are you tired of fear and anxiety from holding you back from achieving your goals? Then this one is for you. If you're a student or an emerging adult who have experienced anxiety, I want you to know that you're not alone. That there are 40 million adults who suffer from anxiety, and 75% of them experience their first episode by age 22. So, this is a recap of our adulting breaking the cycle of anxiety discussion. And you will have a rare opportunity to hear from two exceptional mental health professionals who are licensed clinical therapists who will share their knowledge, and they also will give you these essential tools that will help you deal with your anxiety. So you may need to stop this video right now because I need you to go get a notebook and some paper, a pencil, and for those of you who journal like I do, you want to go get your life journal because there are going to be some life-giving advice that will help you not only deal with your anxiety, but will also allow for you to move forward in those big things that you have planned for your life, and so that you can build the legacy that I know that is coming for you. So with that, welcome to the discussion. So let me introduce you to our exceptional guest that will guide our conversation today. Cassandra Foster is a clinical licensed therapist who is also the owner of Ascend Counseling and Wellness. With over a decade of experience in community mental health, Cassandra is a strong advocate for relationship building and the importance of trauma-informed care. She has an extensive background as a leader and demonstrates a person-centered focus in providing care and delivering therapeutic services. Cassandra spends her time working in her practice, of course, because she's very busy. She provides therapy services, and she also partners with other organizations throughout the community and throughout the Kansas City metropolitan area. She also is a board member for CornerStone Enterprise. And I will tell you that I know Cassandra firsthand, and she is an exceptional woman. She is an exceptional therapist, and she has a keen ability to speak and give life and give voice to those things that you even can't give voice to yourself. She has a beautiful heart, and she is just an exceptional person. And so I am really excited for you guys to meet her. Our second guest is Stefan Stately. He is owner and licensed therapist at New Steps Behavioral Health. His career spans 20 years of multifaceted experience in the mental health field. He also has experience in private practice, school counseling, prison counseling, youth development, higher education, and also nonprofit management. He also has an extensive background in psychiatric residential treatment and board management. He currently provides psychological services to children, adolescents, adults, families, as well as couples throughout the metropolitan area. Stefan has over 10 years of experience in working in partnerships for some of the big organizations here in the Kansas City metropolitan area, like Kaufman Scholars, Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City, St. Luke's Children's Psychiatric Hospital, and several other organizations throughout the Kansas City metropolitan area. And my husband, Cliff Wilson, knows Stefan because they both served in the 100 Black Men. I will tell you, this is a rare opportunity for you guys to have this time to speak and hear from these mental health professionals because they have a heart and a passion to help young adults really begin to unpack those hard things that maybe they don't want to, deal with, but they will give you the courage as well as the tools in order to move into those things that may be holding you back from really stepping into your purpose and building your legacy, which is really critical and one of the cornerstone mission statements and vision for our organization here at CornerStone Enterprise. So with that, I will let you now hear from our distinguished guests.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
How's
Tasha,
it
can I
going?
pay you to write down all those nice things you said about me?
Girl,
Beautiful introductions, right?
you
Yeah.
know, I've been on your couch many days. So I am so excited that you guys get to meet our two distinguished guests. You have a rare opportunity here to hear from them. And now we want this to be a conversation. And so do not be afraid to throw your questions in the chat. But before we kind of get knee deep into the conversation, we want to know a little bit about you, because everything we do at Cornerstone is about building relationships. You know, a lot of you guys have been on multiple events with us, and you know that we're always sharing our personal stories, and we want to hear from you as well. And so we have a poll question that we're going to kind of ask you guys to kind of participate in, so then we get a little bit of information from you. And this is also going to help our guest speakers. So the first question is have you experienced an episode of anxiety in the past year? Yes or no? This is good. It's like, I think 100% of people so far has said yes to that question,
And
me included.
that's part of the reason why we're doing this. This is
That's
an
part of the
important
reason why we're
topic.
doing it. But I think the bigger
Yep.
question that we want to know is the second question. Do I need to stop this cooking? The second question is if you have experienced that, did you know what to do or how to handle it? And this is where the interesting results are coming in.
hmm
So Cliff, can you read the final results?
Yeah. So far, it looks about 60% says yes. It's really interesting. It's been going back and forth between 50 and 60%. So I think the topics that we're going to discuss today are really going to help a lot of people. Like Latasha said, I mean, just plain and simple, we have two powerhouses with us. So definitely get out your notepads. Make sure that you guys are taking notes because we're going to have a great discussion. So go ahead, Latasha.
Well, this is great. So I think I have experienced anxiety, and I absolutely did not even know what was going on with me. And so I definitely didn't know how to handle it because I didn't even know what was happening. And so I think that's why this conversation is going to be very important. We're going to do our best to try to cover three primary topics in this discussion. One, we are going to want to define what we mean by anxiety, because there's a lot of different type of, there's panic attacks, there's depression, there's situational anxiety, there's general anxiety. And so we want to make sure that we are all on the same page and that we level set so that you guys know exactly what we mean when we say anxiety throughout this conversation. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to help you identify the triggers for your anxiety, because it's different for each person. And then what are some healthy ways or things that you can do in order to cope. And the last thing we'll wrap it up with, of course, our guests are going to give us some final thoughts, but we're going to talk about what are some of the treatment options and support, and as well as resources that you can leverage in order to make sure that anxiety is not, preventing you from achieving your goals or living your best life. Okay. So now that I've said that, I'm going to turn it over to our guest speakers, Candy and Stefan. And I'm going to just share a quote that I read from the Anxiety and Depression Association. It said basically that 75% of Americans experience their first episode of anxiety by age 22. And that was relevant for me because the average age for the folks that we serve is around 26, 27 years old. And so usually right when they go to college or right after maybe high school, usually, I mean, I didn't experience it that early on, or maybe I didn't know, but the fact that those things are happening younger for younger adults, and it could have a significant impact on their ability to move through life as well as step into adulthood more successfully. We want to find out from you guys if you could give us a clear definition or your thoughts about what anxiety is so that it frames out the conversation that we're having today.
Well, for me, it's really kind of simple, whether it's a phobia or if it's OCD or if it's just anxiety in itself. It's just an unshakable sense of doom and worrying about a situation. It's invasive. It interrupts your day. It interrupts your thoughts and how you handle things, how you process things, how you interact with people. It can be debilitating. Um, and it can also lead to other pervasive mental health disorders. But it's just an unshakable worrying that you can't control.
Okay.
Absolutely. And pervasive worry and fear. When I describe to clients, I tell them, imagine that you're about to speak to a stadium full of people. Well, your heart starts racing, your hands get sweaty, and you start maybe doubting yourself. Well, living with that 24/7 is, like kind of a picture of anxiety. It's a excessive worry and fear. Sometimes the threats are real, and sometimes the threats are perceived. And so your brain creates danger when danger may not be there. But anxiety is sometimes it's related to specific animals. Like I have a client who struggles with dogs. I have a client who they don't like spiders or ants, and they have anxiety around those things. And so they have this excessive worry and fear of what those animals can do to them. And like I said, sometimes it's real and sometimes it's the perceived threat of what people think. So when I describe anxiety to my clients, I let them know that it's really an excessive worry and fear that's uncontrollable. And it's hard to control the worry. It's hard to control the fear. And that's where therapists come in to help people control that worry. So they're not what I call negative forecasting, always thinking of a negative forecast of situations that don't always have to be negative when you learn coping skills.
Yes, that catastrophizing, that negative self-talk that we have always done to ourselves. We do it all the time and beat ourselves up. Sometimes we're our own worst critics, but we have to listen to that internal voice and the things that we're telling ourselves daily.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I thank you for telling me or to really explaining that, because I think one of the things that I've learned, of course, as I've gotten older, is that every thought that comes into your head is not true. And so really having the ability to examine those thoughts and be able to align those things with what's true um, can be very beneficial. So I love the fact that you guys, just from what I just heard, is that it is an emotion, it is a feeling that sometimes can be overwhelming that will create it's about a threat or some perceived threat or some outcome that maybe you feel like you can't control. And it will have a physical response, some type of physical response in you. And so if you guys could just share, and I also want some of the participants to share, what are some of the physical uh, symptoms of when you are having an anxiety attack or you are experiencing anxiety, so then people can, one, begin to identify possibly when it's happening to them.
Absolutely. The first thing is that when you are triggered in this, well, I'm sure you've heard the fight, flight, and freeze mode. When you're triggered, and what that does is it activates adrenaline throughout your body, and your adrenal glands releases adrenaline, into your bloodstream. And when those that adrenaline attaches to your heart cells starts beating very rapidly. And then when those adrenal cells and the glucose is released from the pancreas, it releases into your skin cells and it releases sweat. And that's why people experience a sweat. And the glucose goes throughout your body, which makes you run faster. And not only that, your heart starts beating 2 liters a minute to about 20 liters a minute. And so now you have all this stuff going on in your body, and that happens in about 1/20th of a second. All it takes for you to see a bear or to see something you think are terrified of, or to even think about a dooming situation, and immediately your body is activated into this fight, flight, and freeze mode. And those are some of the physiological things that we all experience when we're anxious. And I'm sure Ms. Foster will elaborate on that much better
Yeah.
than I did.
No, you broke it down. You went straight to the medical books. Um, you can also have shaking. When you think
Yeah,
about what's being anticipated, shortness of breath. It can feel like you're choking. It can feel like an out of body experience, like you're not even in the same room as
absolutely.
everybody else. You can feel faint and lightheaded, dizzy. Um, when you catastrophize and you think about all of those negative thoughts, it affects your sleep. Um, you need sleep to be calm, and you can't sleep because you can't turn your thoughts off. So you're fatigued. It's a feeling of losing control.
And when you experience those moments, your emotional your emotional brain takes over to where your thinking part of the brain actually shuts down. So that's why it's sometimes difficult to help people explain the dog is not going to bite you. Well, at that point, what we call this prefrontal cortex in the top of our brain that deals with all of our executive functioning and our thinking, now we can no longer think straight because our emotions have taken over. And a lot of times when people enter this, what I call activated state, and they are experiencing these physiological symptoms, they can't process the thinking appropriately. And so the experience can be very unique to every individual. And I always tell clients, identify your own patterns. The internet doesn't diagnose everybody accurately. A therapist helps people identify their patterns of anxiety because it looks different. When I get anxious, my hands don't get sweaty, but my heart starts beating like crazy. But my daughter's hands get really sweaty, and her heart beats as well. But everyone has different patterns of responses, and so even if you're not experiencing some of these physiological responses, you can still have extreme or severe anxiety. Everyone is unique and different, and that's where therapists really help people identify their patterns of anxiety to break those patterns.
I love that because I know for me, I remember there was an occasion when I was just sitting. This was after work. It wasn't anything I could think of that was, I mean, every day was kind of crazy at work, but I remember coming in, sitting down. I wasn't thinking about work or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, my breathing got faster. I was, I was just starting to sweat, and I just really felt completely out of control of my body. And I absolutely hadn't experienced that before. There was nothing going on in front of me. I wasn't like working on a paper or, doing a report or anything like that. I just, felt that happening. And it was very unsettling, you know. And one of the questions that I know that came through was a person said that they've actually experienced having a panic attack in public, and they
Yeah.
were very embarrassed. And from there, they kind of was very afraid because they didn't know what brought it on. And, they didn't know what brought it away, what took it away. And so, in your experience with clients or whatever, what would be a recommendation for if someone had experienced something like that and they really were struggling with just the fear of that happening again.
Yeah, I would piggyback on what Stefan said and seek some support from a therapist, someone that they can identify with and really feel comfortable being transparent with and sharing the things that are going on. It might not be anything that they can identify immediately. You might have to dig a little bit and talk about your childhood, talk about some of the things that we like to stuff down inside, and it'll come back up. So you have to be
Wow.
able to talk about those things to identify
Yes,
where that came from, to be able to heal from it. So you have to find a safe place to do that.
absolutely. And I like to say you can't start to heal until you start to reveal some of the things that has happened in your past or some of the things that you have suppressed inside. And I like what you said, Ms. Foster, when you said you have to reveal some things. And I like to, even if you want to add to anxiety a little bit, I also explain to clients anxiety can be broken down into suppression and avoidance. A
Yeah.
lot of anxious avoid people, avoid responsibility, avoid a lot of things that makes them anxious. They even avoid their debt and sometimes the garage or the basement or anything that they need to avoid instead of like processing those discomforting feelings. And a lot of anxious individuals will suppress their authentic feelings, their authentic thoughts, and their own authenticity most of their life because they are afraid of rejection. And a lot of anxious individuals perform for love, so therefore they never realize who they
Break it
truly
down,
are,
Stefan.
say what they really want to say because they are anxious, and anxious people avoid and suppress. And you can know, like, am I being anxious? Well, are you avoiding certain
Yes.
people, avoiding
Yep.
certain things? Are you suppressing your raw honesty
Yes.
and radical honesty and radical acceptance of the things that you don't want to deal with? A lot of times anxiety involves all of that good stuff. So that's all I
Yeah.
got on that one.
And it's amazing how much we are pushed to do that in society today, on our jobs and in our homes. We don't feel like we can be our authentic self because of that fear of judgment or rejection, like you said. I think you hit the nail on the head.
And the opposite side, I like to speak with clients about this issue. Do you have an excessive need for acceptance?
Mhm.
And sometimes that excessive need for acceptance is creates an anxiety state. And a lot of times, when I working with, I have a lot of anxious clients on my caseload. When I make them say it out loud, people will fail me. They get anxious
Hmm.
because they don't want people to fail. I'm like, no, people will not live up to your expectations. They get all nervous,
Yeah.
and then when I make some of my clients who deal with anxiety say out loud, I have to terminate people from my life in order to get healthy. They get all shaky and nervous and anxious because they're afraid sometimes of the truth. And the truth sometimes what's best for us. But if you're in an anxious state, you will avoid that truth and responsibility because you don't ever have to feel those discomforting feelings. And a lot of times, anxious individuals, we want to avoid discomfort. And if as long as we avoid discomfort, we settle into this comfortness. And that's when I have to say sometimes respectfully, well, if you normalize that much dysfunction, you kind of get exactly what you tolerate, and you'll sit in a bed of problems, not in a shower of solutions that a therapist helps people create.
Wow. Um, I'm gonna have to try to unpack some of that because I mean, there's a ton of things that you've just shared that I know are difficult to do. And I'm saying that because of our experience with emerging adults. They are trying to figure out who they are. They are in that process where they are not sure of who they are. And conflict resolution or dealing with conflict is a big struggle for them.
Mm-hmm.
And Candy, when you talked about the sleeping is an
Oh,
issue
yes.
as well. And, so getting to a place where you don't avoid dealing with the things that need to be dealt with, and you are wanting to please because you don't want to be an outsider, because you're still trying to develop and grow and know who you are. I mean, I am in a much better place now because, I'm very seasoned in my years, and I clearly understand who I am and the value that I bring. And so really trying to um, give some practical tools for young adults who are experiencing, anxiety, because they are avoiding and they don't want to deal with conflict, and they aren't sleeping, and because they really do want to please. I mean,
Yeah.
so these are things that what you just hit. I was like, I love the fact that you addressed that because it brings light to it. And so then what are some, if I think about, some practical tools or things we can share with young adults about, what they can do in order to begin to address, and not just young adults. I mean, some of us that are older, we still, have some of these struggles as well. But what are some of the things that we can do specifically to address that issue, but then also deal with some of the things in order to address some of the anxiety that we have?
When I think about some of my younger clients, it's kind of a double-edged sword because sometimes the threat is very real, and they might be facing getting cut off financially. They might be facing getting put out of a home. So it's a balance. It's like, how honest can I be with this person that's saying, you behave the way I want you to behave, or else. So it's kind of an act of building courage,
Mm, I love that.
building autonomy,
Mm,
and providing support for them to walk into that process of becoming an adult
mm,
separate from their parent or the
yeah,
person that's leveraging what they want them to look like and hindering them from becoming who they really want to be.
yes.
Um, it's a hard walk with young adults, but for us it's practice. It's, when Stefan gave the example of, being anxious about animals and critters, I might have to bring a big old ugly spider. It might have to sit on the desk while I'm talking to you. um, if I'm shy around someone that I'm working with, I might have to do some role play and practice having those conversations that I need to
Mhm.
have that bring me so much anxiety. But it's about exposure and practice and finding the right niche or the right conversation to have that person feels comfortable with.
Beautiful. And I like to focus on all of those things that Ms. Foster just said, and I like to help. Um, Probably because my life as a life coach, I like to really help people precisely identify their goals.
Mhm.
It's hard to obsess over others when you got some good things to look forward to, and a lot of times, I one of the affirmations that I want every client to know is that I would not obsess on the performance of others. And in that, not obsessing on the performance of others, you are identifying precise goals that really excite you, that really get you excited. And I think the goal that every human being should start with is taking my behind the bed on time, right? Because I think us, there's one of my favorite psychologists says that until you get your sleep together, I can't do nothing with you.
Yeah.
And I like that. And I've been trying to really navigate like what he meant by that. And I've been, reading a lot of his works, and I get what he's saying by that. And Matthew Walker wrote a book, Why We Sleep, is a beautiful book if you haven't read it. But sleep is really kind of the start to like good health and discipline. And then we can move on to, okay, now I'm going to start drinking some water. And like these things may sound like silly goals, but at the end of the day, um, it's really it's really it's just really important to the most important thing that like the experts out there say: breathing it was one of the best things you can learn how to do each day. How many times do you breathe a day? Right? And how many good breaths do you take? But deep breathing tells the brain that it's safe. And a lot of times, and this is a true story, I'll hop into a very cold shower very often, and to remind myself that I'm going to be entering discomforting situations today. And do you know how I make it through those 5-10 seconds of cold before the heat comes? Is through deep breathing. And so I've practiced deep breathing a lot through jumping in a cold shower. And there's other things you can do to practice deep breathing, but these are things that are not overnight things. When I get a new client, I always tell them my private practice is like Planet Fitness for the mind. Don't come once a month thinking you about to be buff as a Hulk Hogan with your anxiety. You have to be consistent. You have to come, because y'all heard those gym rats, right? I'm a mental health gym rat. I'm in my own mental health world, practicing, doing all kind of push-ups and sit-ups. What is that man doing? But because I want to be mentally strong, because we got a lot of buff people out there, but mentally weak people as well. But at the end of the day, deep breathing is one of those things I practice, and that helps me pretty much every time I'm triggered. And that's the goal, is when you're triggered, you want to be able to activate a strategy that works. And that could be singing your favorite song, saying something your grandma said to you. One of the things that I do when I'm triggered, I say to myself, I'm more than enough. I'm more than the worst things I've ever done. I can live a life worth living, and I can help reduce suffering here in humanity. And I have been blessed and gifted to do so. And that always helps put me back on track, to not obsess on the performance of others. So that's what I have a whole list of healing affirmations. One of the healing affirmations, I think everyone should come up with some healing affirmations that when you're triggered throughout the day, what do you go to? I am more than enough, and I am more than the worst things I have ever done. So your words ain't about to have no power over me, because there will be a last time. So I'm gonna kiss my daughter like it's the last time. I'm gonna hike like it's the last time. And whatever foo-foo-ness you got going on over there, you can take it, because I'm gonna leave it. So you get what I'm trying to say. It's these healing affirmations that you can learn. I can go on all day about strategies and ways to cope, but you have to find, as Jay-Z said, I'm going to say in a different way, there's a billion ways to cope. Choose one, right? He says something else, if y'all know what I'm talking about. But there's a billion ways to cope. Choose one. And there is so many ways to cope when you are activated, when you are triggered. But some of the simple ones to start doing is deep breathing and learning how to take you behind to bed every day. And then we can start with some of the more advanced human skills like distress tolerance, or positive self-talk all the time, or writing a beautiful letter to yourself and putting it in your back pocket when you think you're going to have a bad day.
Yes.
Hey, let me jump in here for.
Go
ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add, it's really important to decrease your triggers. This past year has been so upsetting in so many different ways. And so I find myself getting angry and anxious about COVID, about vaccines. Am I going to make my parents sick? Am I going to go off on somebody that I don't feel is being what they need to be to people of color in the work environment? All of these different things have impacted us over this past year, and we were inundated with it. The trial that was on TV, it was traumatizing over and over again. They just kept showing it over and over again, and you have to decrease those things. You have to not look at those things. You're drawn to it, but you have to decrease it and save your space. You have to be protective of your space, your mental space. You can't take in social media all day, every day, and think that you won't be anxious. There's so much junk out there, so many
very good
to trigger you. So decreasing the things that trigger us, and social media is a big one, especially for young adults.
Very good. If I had a quote that I wish everyone could what are these stencil on your walls, is what you give attention to grows. What you give attention to grows. All the crap all the crap you give attention to, it grows in your head like the biggest tree you ever seen in your life. What you give attention to grows, and what you give attention to, energy flows. So now you're taking your good energy and you're giving attention sometimes to foolishness or the
Yes.
darkness of humanity. And that's why you have to train your brain to shift your attention to the good stuff first inside of you, and then the good stuff you're working on, and it really improves your quality of life, and you're ready to leave a legacy. You're ready to write your eulogy, and you're ready to live a life worth living, and bring people along with you.
Oh, that's phenomenal. I think there's been a few questions in the chat, but I think you've answered them. Someone had asked about how do you handle anticipated anxiety? And I think you talked about the affirmations, which I think is so important. You know, that self-talk, what you tell yourself, and then that deep breathing. Just really good stuff. Is there anything else that you would add to that? If you know that you're going into a situation that's going to be anxiety filled.
Ms. Foster, what would you say?
I'm into exposure.
Yes.
If I am going to be facing a situation, I'm going to expose myself to that situation so that it's easier for me to navigate when I'm in that situation.
Yes. I'm a huge exposure person. I don't care. Y'all can call me weird all you want. But let's say, like, I went to the gym last night, right? So sometimes to reduce my anxiety in gym, I'll walk through the whole gym to let myself know that I'm comfortable with this place. I know where the exits are. I know where my surroundings is. And before you know it, I'm just talking like an old man to people who are trying to work out. They're like, shut up, boy. I'm trying to get my workout. But it reduces my anxiety around that situation. There's situations where I've leaned into situations that reduces my anxiety, and done the things that I've been so afraid to do, to prove to my brain that I have distorted reality. And that's the key with, anxiety. You distort reality to where, your brain doesn't tell you the truth. I went ziplining with my daughter this weekend. We did 10 zip lines, the fastest and highest zip lines in Arkansas. And so she was determined. She was like, Daddy, I'm not doing the tall ones. And in my head, I'm like, yes, you are, baby. But let me tell you something. She did the zip lines, and she can't stop talking about them all week and how proud she is of herself. But that's that exposure type stuff, that there's a lot of things we're so shocked that we would do, but we'll psych ourselves out of a whole lot of things. Whether it's a roller coaster, which I used to be terrified of and now I'm not, but there's a lot of things that you can, psych yourself out of through reconditioning, which is what Ms. Foster is talking about, is that this exposure is reconditioning the stimuli so that it doesn't get the result that you would want it to get. And we have to do it all the time. And so engage, that's the avoidance piece. Don't avoid, engage everything. Know your weight number, know your glucose number, know your debt number, know your waistline number, know your numbers, right? Know your blood pressure number. Don't be afraid. Put it all in front of you. Put every one of them in front of you and accept it. And the radical acceptance leads to freedom. But until you radically accept your blood pressure, your glucose number, your blood sugar number, your debt number, your waistline number, or whatever, people live their whole life avoiding that. And that's because they're anxious around those numbers. And Cassandra's like, put it in front of you, expose yourself to them so you can get better. Because the more you take responsibility for everything in your life, the more you feel confident about life, and the less responsibility you take, usually the more anxiety you have. As an adult, you feel like, I don't feel that well as an adult. Well, how much of your adult life are you avoiding?
Yes.
Yeah. This is so good. I have taken so many notes, and I love when you say know your numbers, because that is something we talk about in our workshops too. We say you need to know the truth, and you need to know the numbers, and you need to speak the truth. You need to deal with the numbers, And so I love the fact that you're saying this. I want to just I'm going to go a little deeper with you guys, because one of the things we talk a lot about with Cornerstone is about purpose and about legacy. And I believe a lot of the things that you guys are talking about can prevent you from getting there. The thoughts, the anxiety, the fear. So if you don't address it, you you're losing out on something deeper, because I do believe that these folks that are on here, I don't think it's by accident. I think they needed to hear what's going to be said here, because their destiny is on the other side of these conversations. And you guys are equipping them with information and knowledge that's going to be needed for them ultimately to get to where I know they were always supposed to be. And so if you guys could just share, whether it's in your practice or personal, on addressing and dealing with fear, anxiety, and because you did it, what was on the other side of it? Because I think people need to realize that there is something bigger that is trying to stop you. And if you take hold of some of these principles that you're sharing, there's goodness that comes. And so I'm going to just leave that open for you guys to just conversate and share.
Mm-hmm.
So for me personally, when I grew up, I experienced a lot of trauma. My mom was very, very abusive. And I always felt like an outsider in my family. And so I would go out of my way to be accepted and to be valued and to be loved. And that was very anxiety producing, because no matter what I did, I could not get that. I could not get that from some of the members of my family. So it took a lot. It was debilitating at some point. And so I had to face that. I had to face my trauma. I had to face previous abuse. I had to verbalize it, call it what it was, um, put it out there, unstuff it, unpack it. Um, and it was so liberating, because I would get anxious. Thanksgiving, Christmas, I'm
Amen.
nervous. I'm anxious. What are they going
Amen.
to say to me? How are they going to treat
Amen.
me? How am I going to feel when I leave there? And
Amen.
and the things that are supposed to be celebrated were scary, and I just didn't want to participate, and it was awful. It's an awful feeling to not be valued and loved, but
Talk talk about
but
it,
to be
Foster.
able to confront previous abuse, to look abusers in the face and say, this is what you did to me, this is how it's impacted me, you will not treat me this way any longer, I
Amen.
love you, but I can love you from afar. And to be okay with that is liberating. But you have to be able to say what it is. You have to
Amen.
be able to identify it as trauma and abuse, and you have to be strong enough to face your abuser. Um, that's
Amen.
where the bulk of my anxiety came from. The biggest source of my anxiety in my adult life came from things that happened in my childhood, and being able to unpack that and address that, that was very liberating for me.
Amen.
Wow, wow.
That got me emotional over here, Miss Foster. That was beautifully said, and definitely said with courage. And thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
My story is similar, and I tell parents, you want to really mess with your child's psychological psyche, engage in excessive criticism.
Yes.
Excessive criticism creates anxious children. Excessive criticism creates anxious adults and anxious attachments with other adults. And excessive cruelty, I say, some of the same things to my client. You keep saying the same thing, because I come to this conclusion. When you normalize dysfunction, right? Sometimes you don't have a choice but to normalize the dysfunction, because you can't go out and get no apartment, none at 8 years old. But at some point in your life, you start to tolerate dysfunction.
Yes.
And when you tolerate dysfunction, you get what you tolerate. So people will treat you how you teach them how to treat you, because the dysfunction that you've experienced in life, you've internalized that trauma and you don't know anything different.
Yep.
You don't know what it's like to draw the line and say, you will not talk to me this way. You will not put your hands on me. Get out, go away. Cannot be welcome to my house because I will not tolerate dysfunction because I want to be healthy. I want to live a healthy life mentally and emotionally. And what I had to do is I had to understand that, unfortunately, God bless a lot of people in my family and God be with them, but the excessive criticism had me performing for some raggedy love.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
I will not perform for raggedy love no more. If
Yes.
it ain't the best love or the
Keep
best
it.
effort or the best communication, you take that stuff exactly where it belongs, because it don't belong in my presence. Because my value that I can add to people's life through the gifts that God has given me are high, and you ain't about to take these pearls and chop them up and pawn them for your own goodness. No, you have to understand your value, and you are all more than enough, and you are all more than the worst thing that's ever happened to you, and you're all more than the worst thing you've ever done, and you walk with your head held high and your shoulders straight, and you understand that, and you don't engage in self-defeating behaviors or self-defeating self-talk. And that was for me. So I'll never forget. I said, I want to be a psychotherapist one day. The teacher looked at me and said, well, you got to get a master's to do that.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. I said, I can't do no master's because I didn't believe in myself.
Yeah.
I didn't believe in myself because I was never had that praise and encouragement. And I never one therapist, and I went to two therapists for 2 years, and they did great things in my life. But one of them said, if you didn't have a loving mother or father, you got to praise and encourage yourself like a loving mother and father. And from that day on, I've been praising and encouraging myself like a loving mother and father that I did not have, right? That was praising me and encouraging me throughout life. But this excessive cruelty and excessive criticism that shaped who I am, unfortunately, in my younger adult life, that wasn't serving me well. You got to find people who praise you. You got to find safe people who encourage you. You have to find safe people who pour into you. I just pray. People who know me know my heart. Man, you tolerate this stuff, your life ain't never going to change. You got to get to a point where you don't tolerate foolishness, where you don't tolerate avoiding the truth, and you can't help people grow up emotionally. They got to do that on their own. And emotional maturity sometimes prevent people from treating you appropriately, and emotional maturity prevents you from, doing what you need to do. And I'm just thankful for an opportunity to share my story, but it came from trauma. It came from poverty. It came from a lot. And it came with my confidence and rethinking how I think about myself before I can even conceptualize a different view of myself in the future.
Wow. Wow. Cliff, you're unmute. You got to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's a lot. That was a lot. That's powerful. It looks as if maybe we have a couple of questions. Is that the case?
Do I need to unmute somebody, or do they want to type it in the chat?
Okay, maybe not. Just real quick, you guys have touched on something about being authentic, suppressing who you are. Stefan, one of the things that you have presented in a presentation I went to is about, let's talk about men, and just talk about people in general. We are taught to say, hey, I'm good. I'm okay. I got this. I got my stuff together. I'm all right. You had talked about being so cool all the way to the grave. And that was a powerful, powerful thing, because we're taught to do that. I bring up men because as men, we're taught to, hey, don't let anything bother you. Just keep going. You can't show weakness. Can you talk about that for just a minute?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I froze up here for a little bit. My bad.
Okay.
But no, let me just lead the way. As a kid, I struggled with anxiety and depression and sexual abuse. And I struggled with a lot of stuff that men don't want to talk about, right? And it impacted me as I grew older, as an adult. And I struggle with things that I'm not ashamed of anymore, because how you deal with shame is you look it right in the face and you grab and you put it in the headlock and you choke it out. But you can't let it haunt you. That's your shadow. I'm not ashamed of every sentence of my life. A lot of the sentences of my life are not pleasing, but I'm not afraid of it anymore. But I used to be terrified to write my story. And one of the workshops I do is rewriting your story. But before you rewrite your story, you have to radically accept your story before you rewrite it, because you can't rewrite what you haven't even accepted, because then you're kind of living this lie. And a lot of times when I'm with men, that men don't like when I put them in a room, because I'll share it all. I'll share every darkness that's inside of me to help them understand. Put it like this: I taught an anger management class. I would start the anger management class with writing all the times I've ever got angry. The whole board would be full with stuff. And I would ask men to either put a check mark next to it or write something else. Before the end of the class, the whole board, I said, so before you come in here and minimize your depravity or minimize your humanity, radically accept the fact that you can be a cruel human being. And a lot of men that I work with, it blows their mind when I say, you have a problem with being friendly, which is why your wife don't like you, right? But you want to act like it's something else. Like you don't know how to be friendly. And unfortunately, she has normalized you not being friendly. So it just works. And that's how it is. But at the end of the day, that's that stuff that people don't want to unpack. It's like men need to unpack their emotions, and the women do a much better job at it. Research has validated that, but men struggle in unique ways. Men need space to talk. And I love when brothers come to therapy. I just want to do it for free. I'm like, $10, but I gotta remember, okay, no, they need to pay for this, because I offered last year for Black History Month, I offered free counseling for Black men. And a very distinguished man I respect said, brother, what you did was great, but men won't go to the ER unless they're bleeding. And they're not going to therapy unless they're about to lose something. And I'll never forget those two things. And that wise man who has spent his life in the medical field was so true. It was so true. And I thank him for that wisdom. But we need to get to a place where we're not just at the ER when we're bleeding. We're not just at the doctor's office because we got some kidney stone, but we know our numbers. We're talking about stuff. We're talking about our marriages. We're talking about our relationships, our trauma as kids. I got beat. I didn't get whoopings. I got beat, right? Butt naked across the bed, beat with the switch I had to go get on numerous occasions. And that really messed me up, on some levels that I had to process that trauma. And I'm not afraid to talk about that. And a lot of men have similar stories in worse situations. But if pray, encourage the men in your life. Men, if you're on here, be authentic, be real, accept just the raw reality, the harsh reality at times of life, and don't let your pride get in the way. Don't let your ego get in the way. Don't let your blind spots get in the way. Like, I am here because of mentorship. I am here because of other men who surrounded me and still surround me. And men need each other. And it's the most beautiful thing. And I'm a believer. I think Satan knows how beautiful it is when men get together and form something beautiful. And that's why he keeps it from happening.
That's good. So go ahead, Latasha. I've got so many questions, but I'm going to leave it alone.
And this is usually what happens is this gets all of this meat right at the end. And so I am going to turn it over to you guys just to give us some closing comments. If you're on this call, we are going to rebroadcast this. We're going to kind of grab all the nuggets and kind of put it in there and, package it for you. And we'll have some resources also included. We do have a survey that you will receive. So please give us your feedback for that as well. But I'm going to let our guests give some closing comments for us before we, you know, have to leave, because I mean, I'm telling you, I wish we were all in the same room so I can be like, I got another question. But I'll let you guys give us some closing comments.
Well, I just wanted to thank everybody for giving us the space to have the conversation. I wanted to thank Stefan for being so transparent. Brother, I think you're dope. I think you're amazing. You're amazing. You are amazing. And I just want to kind of piggyback on what he said. It made me think about something. Cliff asked specifically about men, but as women, we have a role to nurture our men to feel comfortable expressing themselves and expressing their emotions and feeling and being able to share. And sometimes we don't do a good job of that as mothers or as partners or as wives, and we need to do better at that. There's all areas where we can do better. We can all help someone to be less anxious in our life. We can all teach someone a technique or Stefan had a million of them, a million affirmations and saying something.
I will send them out, and you can send them to people if you want.
I will.
I would
have them on
love
my
that.
computer.
So
I
I'm
would
going to
love
be
that.
knocking them out. Yes.
I would love that. You know, just give that tidbit to someone else that you see is struggling, because we all know when someone is struggling. And
That's
thank you
good.
again for your time.
Yeah, and you know, for work, if you have work, if you work for a job, don't be afraid to ask for EAP. It's okay. EAP is free services on your job. If you had insurance, Psychology Today, hey, therapists are good people. They will negotiate with you. I mean, not, you know, they will work with you. If you really want to put in the work, a therapist will help you. I mean, a lot of times we don't, you know, always get people who are like really want to change. It's usually sometime a crisis that happens. Then they want to change. They come to us 3 times. They want to come no more. So I tell people, don't be coming to me 3 times and then you ain't coming back. That's like, you know, don't be wasting your money on this gym membership because you about to get buffed mentally. So don't be afraid. But you know what? I always say, ask somebody in your family for mentorship. Like, there's someone you respect, like, ask them for mentorship. But here's the deal: get help no matter what it is. You know, people are so proud about yeah, I go to the top doctor and blah blah blah. I got the best real estate agent, blah blah blah. Okay, who's your great mental person, or who's your great spiritual person? Be bragging about your salesman at the car dealership, but that your raggedy brain in the brand new car. Come on now. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to be in a place where you're getting the help you need, and it's okay. Trust me. People love to help people who humble. I mean, the wisdom that Cliff and Latasha have, come on, man, I could sit at their feet for hours, for days, you know, for years, and learn from them. I don't know everything. Miss Foster can teach me so much, and I'll bring my knowledge and I'll bring what I have, but I'll sit and listen for 3 years before I say something, because I'm okay with that. And we got to be okay with that. So whatever it is, there's resources. Don't be out there diagnosing yourself online. You know, let people help
Everybody
you.
got borderline.
Everybody borderline. Look, borderline needs love too. I love borderlines. You know what I'm saying? Because they need love too. I got anxiety, depression. Oh, you narcissistic. You narcissistic. You don't even know you narcissistic. You narcissistic about being anxious. Get out of here. But anyways, you get what I'm trying to say. Everybody would throw narcissism out and like, yeah, you narcissistic. But I can't say that because I'm a helper, right? I don't be calling people out. But y'all get what I'm saying. There's a lot of resources out. I'll give my information. You can reach out to us, and I will guide you, lead you. I'm not I can't accept new clients right now. I'm maxed out, but July 1st I'll reconsider kind of my caseload, but I don't have any space for therapy. But if you're willing to wait till July, August, I'll be willing to help you. But you know, I will do everything I can to refer you and help you out and give you resources, books, everything. I love to help people help themselves, because it's the most beautiful thing ever.
Okay, with that, Cliff, I don't know if I think we just are a little shy over, but thank you guys. I appreciate you guys. I know that I have had a chance to be in the company of both of you guys, and I knew I was different. I know I'm different for Candy because, like I said, she's been diagnosing me for years. And so, and then like I said, the time that I've had with Stefan, I am so excited and I'm so thankful that we are able to have this type of conversation and to share in a way that's so authentic that I know it is helping people. And that is what this is all about. And so for the folks that are on the call, for the young people who are on there, and then some of our seasoned ones, I just want to encourage you and go back to what we always say, that there is purpose planted in you. It was there from the very beginning. It's just waiting to be revealed. And there's always these obstacles along the way that's trying to prevent you. But there's something great on the other side of it, because there's legacy that happens. And that is what this is about. It's not just about you. It is about the generations that come after you. And that is what that's the gold nugget that sometimes we lose sight of. And so it's worth the work. It's worth putting the time in and to do the hard work of your life. And we are here. Cornerstone is here to help you. We always have workshops and webinars that we're doing. So follow us, get us in your, social media queue. And we are going to do this together. So the last thing I want to give, we usually just end with a quote, which I think you guys have already touched on. I love quotes. That's why I wrote down so many that Stefan said, but the greatest weapon against stress or anxiety is the ability to choose one thought over the other. Align that crazy mess with truth. And once you begin to do that, there's power in that. And so this is how you can get in contact with us. Most of you guys received an email from me, and you're going to receive one with the survey. And so thank you very much. I appreciate you. And I'll see you the next time.
Thank you. It's been a blessing.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.